Last week, Seattle had a vote for mayor, and instead of choosing Bruce Harrell, who looks like the Cowardly Lion, we chose Katie Wilson, who looks like olive oil from Popeye. Now, in Seattle, we have a newspaper called The Stranger. It's a newspaper that's named after the man who used to hand candy to you out of a van as a kid so he could touch your penis. Now, the newspaper The Stranger does a great service to Seattle voters by publishing their political endorsements. That way, you just have to see who the stranger endorses and vote for the exact opposite. Regardless, though, Seattle will always end up electing a leftist because in Seattle, you get one ballot per pronoun. Katie Wilson is the progressive mayor. She calls herself a progressive, but she dresses like she's on Little House on the Prairie. Her style is mid-century modern, if that century was the 1800s. She's a progressive, and her child is about to turn 3 years old, which is a very special time in a progressive child's life because you're now old enough to choose your own gender. Katie Wilson is the new mayor. She's never really had a job long term, so we made her mayor. She's very pro-worker, just anti-working. She worked briefly in construction as a traffic cone. She doesn't own a car. She rides her bike and takes the bus because nothing says millions of people can count on me because I own a bus pass. I will be there for Seattle families in 15 minutes once the bus gets here. The new mayor, Katie Wilson, has run a non-profit with a small handful of volunteers and a $200,000 a year budget. Her non-profit has lost money 3 years in a row. Oh, I know. Let's hand her a $9 billion city budget with thousands of workers and 41 departments. She wants to raise new progressive revenue. What is progressive revenue? Well, it's revenue for progressives. It's when you raise revenue while wearing a furry suit. She claims she can't afford Seattle, but her husband doesn't work. Now, I'm not a math genius, but maybe if the man of the house had a job, that would help. But in defense of Mr. Katie Wilson, a lot of places won't hire a man in a butt plug and a gimp suit. Mr. Katie Wilson wanted to start an in-home bakery, which is a nice way of saying, I own a 3-foot bong. Katie Wilson wants to Trump-proof Seattle. Trump. Do you mean the democratically elected leader who was voted in by the will of the people of the United States because something about democracy or something? You're going to take on Trump? What are we going to call it? The Orange Bowl. What is it about Trump you're against? Is it the lowering taxes, raising revenue, cheaper gas and energy, reducing crime, and fighting fentanyl overdose? Well, we certainly can't have that in Seattle. Katie Wilson is unable to afford Seattle, so she thought, I'll become the mayor. That's like saying, I can't shoot or dribble a basketball, so I'm going to be the point guard for the Lakers. Here's a novel idea, Katie. If you can't afford Seattle, maybe you're not qualified to be the leader. Or maybe your plan was to make it so nobody can afford Seattle equally. Let's dive into some of Katie Wilson the Unqualified's policy ideas. Here are some quotes from her website. Our property tax has problems. Due to state law, it doesn't keep pace with inflation. Inflation is a cost to the homeowner. So your solution to the homeowner having to pay more is to have the homeowner pay more for paying more? One of the biggest problems facing Seattle is that things are too expensive. So you've come up with a grand plan where you're going to raise the prices of housing and property taxes to make it more affordable by charging more? She wants to put in a vacancy tax. A vacancy tax will incentivize property owners to rent their property for residential or commercial use instead of holding it empty as a speculative investment. First of all, the reason 33% of all commercial real estate in downtown is sitting empty is because nobody wants to go to downtown. Why? Because you overtax them. What else? You let crime run rampant. The whole point of the United States experiment was that our founders allowed regular people to own property and land. That the crown, i.e. Katie Wilson, couldn't dictate who owned property or what the pleasant class was required to do with the property. If they want to rent it out, they can. If they don't want to rent it out, that's fine too. That's called liberty, freedom, and the right to happiness and to own property. Leftist math reminds me of my 6-year-old niece running a lemonade stand. My niece was selling lemonade until one day she had a great idea. She went to my sister and said, "What if we sold the lemonade for $1 million? That way, my 6-year-old niece would be a millionaire and all she had to do was sell 1 cup of lemonade." That is how a leftist liberal approaches economics and state budgets. Just completely throw away the laws of economics, supply and demand, and human nature, and people will simply pay whatever we tell them to pay, whether they have the money or not, or whether they want to leave or not. Her website has a quote from economist Jake Vigdor from the University of Washington. "We're a tax haven like the Cayman Islands." We're a tax haven? Is that why there's so many Mexican cartels operating here? For those of you who don't know what the University of Washington is, it's a local terrorist training camp where impressionable young students learn to hate America and spread the timeless tenets of bisexual, vegan, feminist jihad. Here are some clips from some of the recent courses being taught at the University of Washington. Here's a clip of Katie Wilson, the unqualified, first of her name, talking to striking Starbucks workers.
That's why I am proud to join them on their picket line and proud to say loud and clear, I am not buying Starbucks and you should not either.
You won't shop at Starbucks? You just, as the leader, told the citizens to not support one of the largest employers in your area? So you're going to tax Starbucks for the money Starbucks won't make because you don't want anybody to buy their coffee? When I worked at Starbucks in Miami 20 years ago, every weekend we were slammed so hard the line was out the door. But back in my day, we were adults about it. You got high and you brought in a flask of vodka to mix in your orange juice. And just like that, a rough night turned into a fun time. These kids, they just need to learn how to pour a little vodka in some orange juice and grow up. Well, Seattle, good luck. You're about to learn why there's never ever in history been a man who floated on a tire from a capitalist country so he could immigrate and sneak into a communist country. This is what happens when stupid meets reality. This is the Simon Kaufman Show. Please share, like, subscribe, join us on the journey. So click that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video.